Hey, how's it going everyone? Jinsula here with a brand new Pokemon Go video. I hope your day is going really well, and let's get right into it. So this weekend we have a raid day featuring both fusion forms of Necrozma, and I've already talked about why these two fusion forms are so important, but taking down these raid bosses is a little bit tricky, and the reason for that is because both of them actually have a unique set of counters that you will want to bring. So when it comes to this weekend's raid day, you will want to be best prepared with two teams of different counters, and I'm going to be talking about that here. So without further ado, let's talk about the two fusion forms and how you can take them down. Alright, let's first talk about Dawnwing's Necrozma. So this boss is going to be both Psychic type and Ghost type, which means it's going to have a double weakness against both Dark and Ghost type attacks. But it's also going to have a triple resistance to Fighting type attacks, as well as a double resistance to Normal type attacks. And it's also going to resist attacks from Poison and Psychic. Now, you probably don't want to bring any of these types up against Dawnwing's Necrozma, but if you top load your team with your best Dark types and Ghost types, then you will be good to go. Now, if you want perfect IVs for Dawnwing's Necrozma, then you will want to end up with either a 2104 or 2630 if it's weather boosted. And considering that Dawnwing's Necrozma is only going to be weather boosted by one weather type, and that's going to be windy weather. Now, if you want to secure the win against Dawnwing's Necrozma, you kind of want to treat it like a Mega Evolution. You will want to bring a raid group consisting of 5 trainers that are at least level 30, with Pokemon that are at least level 30, and make sure every single member of that raid party is bringing their best Dark types. Now, if you want to challenge yourself, you will want to go with about 3 trainers total in the raid group, but I do think it might be possible to duo this raid boss if you both have really powerful Dark types. And make sure both trainers are at least level 40, and all of your Pokemon are at least level 40. Now, let's talk about the best counters for Dawnwing's Necrozma. Of course, you could go with either Dark types and Ghost types, but I suggest you go with Dark types considering that every single Dark type is going to be resistant against Dawnwing Necrozma's moves. This includes Mega Tyranitar or Mega Houndoom as your Mega Evolution, and then of course a full team of Shadow Tyranitars behind it will be the most ideal. But if you do not have a full team of Shadow Tyranitars, then you could obviously go with regular Tyranitars. Just make sure you're going with Bite and Brutal Swing for each and every single one of their moves. So yeah, Dawnwing's Necrozma is extremely straightforward. Just go with a team of your best Dark types and you should have no problem taking it down. It does have a very limited number of weaknesses, but it does have some very powerful resistances, so you will obviously want to be very careful with what Pokemon you bring. Alright, next up, let's talk about the other fusion form of Necrozma, and that is going to be Dusk. And this Pokemon is going to be basically a beefed up version of Metagross. It's going to have the same typing, which is going to be Psychic and Steel. This means it's only going to have weaknesses to Ground, Dark, Fire, and Ghost type attacks, and it's going to have a plethora of different resistances, which include a double resistance to Psychic and Poison type attacks, as well as a regular resistance to Fairy, Ice, Flying, Normal, Grass, Rock, Steel, and Dragon type attacks. So obviously do not bring any Pokemon with these typings. They're going to be very much useless against Dusk Necrozma. Now, if you want perfect IVs, it's going to be the same as Dawnwing's Necrozma, and the reason for that is because when you defeat either of these raid bosses, you're going to end up with a Necrozma encounter. So you will want one that is 2104, and if it's weather boosted, it's going to be 2630. And since Necrozma is a pure Psychic type, it's going to be weather boosted by windy weather and windy weather alone. Now, Duskmane Necrozma is going to be slightly trickier compared to Dawnwing's Necrozma, and the reason for that is because you do need quite a few trainers in order to take it down. You're going to need a little bit more than Dawnwing's Necrozma, and the reason for that is because Duskmane Necrozma does not have any double weaknesses. So you will want a raid group that consists of 6 trainers. That's how you're going to secure the win up against this raid boss. But if you want to challenge yourself, you could definitely do this as a trio. Just make sure every single player in that group is level 40 with all of their Pokemon being level 40, and you're all bringing the absolute best counters. Speaking of which, let's go over those right now. So when it comes to Duskmane Necrozma, you will want to treat it like a Metagross raid, so you will want to bring either Primal Groudon or Mega Charizard Y as your Mega Evolution, and then Shadow Heatran is going to be the absolute best Pokemon up against Duskmane Necrozma, and that's because Heatran not only resists a lot of Duskmane Necrozma's moves, but it also brings out a ton of Fire-type raid damage. Now another great alternative is actually going to be Dawnwing's Necrozma, and the reason for that is because it is one of the top Ghost type raid attackers in the game, and it does resist a lot of Duskmane Necrozma's moves. And then Reshiram is another great option. Just keep in mind that some of Duskmane Necrozma's moves will not be resisted because Reshiram also has a Dragon type. Now, if you do not have any of these Pokemon, you could also consider bringing some of these budget counters. Excadrill is going to be pretty stable up against Duskmane Necrozma, but another Pokemon that is actually uniquely good for Duskmane Necrozma is going to be Incineroar. And the reason for that is because Incineroar has both a Dark and Fire typing, and those are going to be really helpful up against this raid boss. So yeah, even though there is a bit of overlap with Tyrannitars, I still think your best way to go about this is by having two different teams of different counters. When it comes to Dawnwing's Necrozma, it's going to be both Ghost and Psychic, which means Dark types are definitely going to be your best bet. But when it comes to Duskmane Necrozma, you will want to go with Fire types because Fire types deal a lot more damage. And I really do think that if you come prepared with two different teams, you're going to have a much better time this weekend. And I do think that when it comes to both of these Pokemon, it's incredibly important that you try to farm up as much fusion energy as possible for both of them. Now, of course, Niantic neglected to give us another Cosmog for this event, considering that for a lot of players, they did not play Pokémon Go during the initial release of Cosmog during the Season of Light, so a lot of players may not necessarily get both fusions out of this weekend. However, I still think you need to raid as many of these as you can, because you will want to stock up on as much fusion energy as you can, so that when you eventually get yourself a new Cosmog, then you will have the fusion energy to get both fusions. And then on top of that, you will always want to have multiple copies of both of these Pokemon, because if you were to have a full team of Dawnwing's Necrozma, for example, or Duskmane Necrozma, then you're going to be insanely well prepared for any raid battle. That's how powerful these Pokemon are, and having multiple copies of them is definitely going to elevate your account. So yeah, this weekend is going to be incredibly important. Just so you know, this raid day is going to be happening this Saturday from 2 o'clock p.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. local time. And there's also going to be opportunities for you to use remote raid passes throughout the entirety of the weekend, regardless if you live in a different time zone. So yeah, I think that's something you need to prepare for. Make sure you spend your Pokecoins wisely and pick up a bunch of raid passes, because you will want to get as many of these raid bosses defeated during this weekend. And yeah, with that said, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts regarding this Necrozma raid day down below. Do you plan to raid hardcore for both of these Pokemon, or are you planning to skip this out? If that happens to be you, then definitely share your reasons why down below, and let's have a great discussion. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. If you found it to be informative and helpful, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And also don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support the Jinsula channel, the absolute best way you can do that is by joining my Patreon. And for all of my paid Patreon members, they get a permanent spot on my in-game Pokemon Go friends list. And I also prioritize them for raid battles. So if you want to play Pokemon Go with me, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. And if you want to support my channel in a completely different way that doesn't involve spending money or any kind of support, then you could do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula. I'm on the platforms that you see on screen. Make sure you go over there and give me a follow. And with all that said, that's going to be it for this video. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all next time.